Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nza-Ari Khepra.
Hello everyone, I'm Nza-Ari Khepra and I'm a founding member of Project Orange Tree. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago and I'm currently a rising sophomore. and I am currently a rising sophomore at Columbia University. Before I continue, I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for dedicating your time to a cause that has drastically affected me over the last few years. On January 29th of 2013, my friend, Hadiya Pendleton, was shot and killed while hanging out in a park that was just 5 minutes away from our high school. Although her death brought a depression onto our community unlike any other I've ever seen before, her life was the inspiration for our own campaign and organization that was recognized on a national and international level. This campaign and organization I'm referring to is called Project Orange Tree. Project Orange Tree is a youth-led violence awareness organization that is focused on eradicating structural violence. Structural violence is an umbrella term for things like failing school systems, institutionalized racism, and food deserts. What you may or may not know about structural violence is that it is one of the main causes of direct violence being things that are physical violence, physical forms of violence, like, for example, gun violence. As Project Orange Tree continued to counteract structural violence by hosting community forums or candlelight vigils or anti-food desert food drives, we became the motivation for a movement called the Wear Orange campaign and also the first annual National Gun Violence Awareness Day on June 2nd. June 2nd would have been Hadiya's 18th birthday. An idea that only me and my friends created became something so large that it was the inspiration for an entire nation to stand up and declare their desire to eradicate gun violence. I know that many of us here have been affected by gun violence, way too many of us. And your presence here today shows that you really have a desire to create a change, that you have a desire to prevent other people from experiencing gun-related tragedies. Your presence here today also shows that you have all of the resources in order to make a change, whether it be locally or worldwide. With GenProgress's Gun Violence Prevention Network, you have unrestricted access to policy research, support on direct actions, and inclusion in rich conversations, all focused on gun violence prevention. Resources like these are essential in a successful movement. So now that you have all of the essentials, how will you make progress? Thank you all for this opportunity, and now it is my pleasure to introduce 3 gun violence prevention activists that are all working to make a difference. Join me in welcoming Katie Chan, Bruce Oops Franks, and Caitlyn Caruso to the stage, joined by Lauren Sills.
Thank you for that, Nza-Ari. She's absolutely inspiring. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure of being with 3 GenProgress gun violence prevention advocates. And they are a part of our national network of gun violence youth advocates who are either organizing on their campus or on their community, really just trying to eradicate gun violence. And so I really hope that we have a powerful conversation today, ladies and gentlemen, and it really is a pleasure working with you guys for the past year and a half. So as everyone knows, gun violence is really devastating our generation. And I really just want to hear from you. I mean, many of you kind of started either from a personal tragedy, maybe were driven by friends and family who were impacted by gun violence, or were maybe inspired by other youth who were working on this issue. Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about maybe your personal experience and why you were driven to take action?
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. In 1991, my big brother was 9 years old. I was 6. He was used as a human shield. He was shot by two men came out the house arguing about drugs. So at an early age, I witnessed gun violence. And it's a combination of gun violence in our neighborhoods, within our community, as well as police brutality. I was driven to this point with GVP because before there was a Mike Brown, there was a Kerry Ball Jr. who was shot 21 times by the police. And after Mike Brown, there was a Von Derek Myers who was shot 8 times from the back by the police. There was a Norvell Brown, who's a St. Louis City police officer who was a good friend of a lot of people in St. Louis, who lost his life in the line of duty. So it goes hand in hand between the community and the police. So I was driven to this point because we're tired of gun violence as a whole, especially within our inner city and the people that see it so often, and it has become the norm for us. The norm should never be to witness gun violence of any sort every single day, and it becomes just an everyday thing to you, and it's depressing. It's really depressing, and linking up with the GVP was one of the greatest things ever. And these guys, it's my team. It's my team, so.
Thank you for that. Caitlyn, do you want to kind of... Caitlyn, do you want to kind of share a little bit of your story and kind of what drove you to, make a difference in your community of Las Vegas?
Yeah, okay, so I'm Caitlyn, I'm from Vegas, like Lauren said. But before I lived in Las Vegas, I lived in the heart of New York City. Yeah, me and my mom moved around a lot. We lived in Spanish Harlem, the barrio, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and living there I was no stranger to gun violence. I was no stranger to police brutality. My mom had to throw us in the van we were moving out of because there was a drive-by happening and it hit the building behind us. And it's not a stranger to Vegas either. When we moved into an apartment in the hood in Vegas, there was a shooting that killed our neighbor and the bullet was lodged in our apartment building wall. So this is not a stranger to me, and it's not a stranger to any of you, I guarantee. Somebody knows somebody. And I've just been driven to do this work because it intersects with everything I already do. It's such an important issue.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Now, there are some people in the audience who haven't been maybe personally affected by gun violence. They might have not known a Tamir Rice or a Mike Brown or known someone from a mass shooting in Colorado. But why should young people care? Now, Katie, I'm going to kick it over to you. Why should young people really care about this issue if they were never maybe personally affected?
Well, to that, I would say that you have been personally affected, whether you realize it or not. If you have ever been scared walking down the street or participated in a lockdown drill or ever felt uncomfortable in a public setting thinking of what would happen if a gunman walked in, you have been personally affected. Besides that, the statistics are already there. This year, gun deaths are set to surpass automobile accidents as the #1 killer of young people in our nation. And it already has surpassed automobile accidents in Washington State, where I'm from. It's affecting our generation, and we need to do something to stop it. There's a lot of things we can do, and we should do, and we can't accept that this is an everyday thing.
Thank you for that. So there's really a spectrum of gun violence issues. I mean, all three of you are from all across the country. We've got Seattle, we've got Las Vegas, and of course, Bruce mentioned that he is from St. Louis. And you're all dealing with more pressing issues. It might be police brutality, it might be campus carry, but really, what specifically to your community is the most pressing issue around gun violence? And whoever wants to start.
I'll start. I think it's a combination of police brutality, abuse of power, police accountability, there is none, as well as the root cause of gun violence, which may stem from lack of resources, lack of education. We so often say put the guns down, but we're not giving them anything else to replace those guns. We're not putting books in their hands. We're not giving them jobs. And that's one thing that my organization that was started through GVP 28 to Life really concentrates on is it concentrates on youth empowerment, community empowerment, really getting those resources into our neighborhood so we can replace those guns with something that's going to make life a lot better for everybody.
Great, thank you for that. Katie, what about you? What's going on in Seattle, and what some of the issues that you're working on or trying to organize around?
Well, recently in Washington, we passed universal background checks with Initiative 594. And I think another really important issue in Washington State is child access prevention. It happens everywhere. It happens in the city. It happens in farm towns. We need to make sure that children can't get their hands on guns. And it's so easy to buy a safe or to buy a trigger lock. We need to do something about it.
And Caitlyn, being from Las Vegas, we know lots of kind of campus carry things were going on in the state of Nevada. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you did? What was really the pressing issue that you and others on your campus were organizing around?
Okay, so if any of you read GenProgress, you might have heard about Nevada in the last couple months. We have had an absolute ridiculous town in our legislative session. Every bill was guns, guns, guns. One of the biggest issues I was organizing around was campus carry. Our campus carry was originally drafted to allow people to conceal carry in K-12 schools, airports, daycare facilities, and universities. It was absurd. And the NRA was backing this bill. It was backing the bill. So I ended up organizing a lot of college students, middle schoolers, high schoolers to get out and say, no, this is bad policy for our state, and we're not going to take it. But as that was a success, but owning up to some of the downsides of our state, we also saw our Stand Your Ground law become expanded, the first state to do that since Trayvon Martin's death. So we put up a really good fight, and we have a lot of work to do in the next legislative session with a universal background checks ballot initiative coming up in 2016.
So I know many people in the audience are organizers, really interested in kind of organizing for action. These incredible organizers up here, it's tough. This is an issue that is emotional. This is really life and death. And so I know lots of people attended Wellstone because they're a fantastic organization. But can you three kind of maybe speak personally about what do you do to really avoid burnout? When you're organizing on this kind of issue and all progressive issues, what can you do? What are some of the best tips, maybe some of the best practices to really not, be maybe too stressed out over this every single day? What are some things that you do to, maybe release some of that stress and frustration around this?
I'll take that. I'm definitely still working on this, so I think my Twitter info will come up at some point. Feel free to tweet self-care tips at me. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've received is to have really supportive friends both within the network and outside of the movement. Within the movement, they understand what you're going through. I remember the Seattle Pacific University shooting really hit me hard, and I relied on a lot of my campaign staff to, help me get through that day and that week. So that's an example of friends within the movement. And outside of the movement, it was just great to have someone that you could go to and sit down at a meal with and spend a whole hour and a half not talking about gun violence. It's a really emotional issue, and sometimes you need to take a break. It's really important to realize that sometimes you need to stop and take a night off and do your laundry or go grocery shopping and just do basic self-care things. And I know it's hard to make time for it, but it's really necessary. It will help the movement in the long run.
Thank you for that. I'd love to hear from each one of you. What are some of the best tips to taking care of yourself?
Okay, so I definitely neglected that in the last 6 to 7 months. Our legislative session was so hard on me and my body and my spirit. I'm a jack of all trades. I do a lot of organizing around sexual assault, around sex education, and especially during the campus carry bill when people were testifying that bill was going to help sexual assault survivors, that little women walking on campus could feel safer because they could put a bullet in their predators' heads. That sort of stuff from our elected officials really, really took a toll on me. And it definitely took my friends and my support network to tell me, you need to take a breather. You need to stop, get off Twitter, stop calling people, and you need to focus on yourself. And while I didn't listen to their advice all the time, because I'm human and I was angry as hell, it definitely helped to have people there to say, you need to slow down, take a bath, do something.
Thank you, Bruce.
Unfortunately, I'll just say this. Organizers, people within the community that's doing anything. I look at them as superheroes. I look at us as superheroes. I look at myself as a superhero.
You are.
But
Yes, he is. All three of them are.
the thing about being a superhero is I like to think of myself as Superman. But the problem with that is self-care and ability of taking care of myself is my kryptonite. Because it's hard for me to go to sleep. It's hard for me to eat. It's hard for me to do a lot of things when so many things are going on in our neighborhoods. It's hard for me to get that rest and really take care of myself when I have my brothers and sisters calling me from Chicago about all of the problems that are going on up there. So I'm going to be looking for y'all to tweet me and help me with some self-care tips because it's hard. It's hard to do, definitely when you're passionate about your people being white, black, Hispanic, Asian, blue, green, gay, straight, young, old, whatever. I take on all of those. I really feel passionate about my people as a whole, so it's hard for me to take care of myself sometimes. Sorry.
So just tweet all three of them. Hashtag self-care tips.
Or help us in the movement and take some things off of our hands.
Yeah.
And so my last question, and I think what would be really great for all three of you to answer, what advice can you give to those in the audience, those watching on live stream now? If you're interested in gun violence prevention, what's some of the suggestions or tips to get involved in this movement? What would you suggest to someone?
I would suggest linking up with the GVP and Generation Progress first. They are great. But outside of that, my advice would be do something. Just do something, anything. Nothing's too small. Nothing's too small. Don't ever think like, oh, I'm just one person. One person could change the world. So just do something.
Katie, what about you?
I'd like to echo Bruce and say get involved with Generation Progress's GVP network. You can talk to any of us four, and we will get you hooked up right away. Along with that, you can start things in your own community, whether it's just getting a group of your friends together to write to a legislator or make phone calls. Any of that really helps, and sometimes legislators do listen. So like he said, do something.
Caitlyn, you want to close us out?
Yeah, so I think any action is a good action, right? So I saw actions from my mom from a young age too. So, also my mom's watching on the live stream, so I'm gonna say hi.
Hi, Mom.
But even her, when I was a kid, she mentored the young kids in our neighborhood. She got out there, she saw that they were struggling with these issues of violence, and she brought the kids from gangs in our neighborhood in. She had them hang up their colors, and she had them sit down for dinner. She fed them every week, and she used that feeling of community to bring them in and say, this is what we need. We need to create our family here, and we need to stop out on the streets. So really, this action can look like anything. It can look like reaching out to your friend who's having a really hard day and doesn't know what to do. It can mean referring someone to mental health resources. It can mean tweeting your legislators. Like, just build that community and get angry about something and then do something about it. Because that's all that we all do. We just get angry and we decide to change it.
Thank you so much. So as Katie mentioned, if you are interested in getting involved with the Generation Progress Gun Violence Prevention Network, I recommend talking to any of us up here, but any Generation Progress staffer throughout the conference. We are more than happy to help you get involved with our trainings, our summits. We give out organizing, policy research, and messaging strategy, really just to build everyone up who was really passionate about this issue. We have an amazing national network that these three are involved with. And can we just give our superheroes a round of applause? Thank you, thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, we're just gonna